You open your eyes to the soft glow of lamplight, the kind that flickers as if it's trying to remember its own name, and you find yourself in the quiet heart of Nero's Rome. You're lying on a low couch, upholstered in dyed wool, so bright it must have cost someone at least 3 favors and 1 mild existential crisis. The air smells faintly of warm olive oil, crushed herbs, and the lingering perfume of whoever passed through this room last, possibly in a hurry. You sit up slowly, because this is a sleep-friendly channel, and nobody needs sudden movements at this hour. You hear voices drifting from the hallway, soft and casual, the way people talk when they assume you can't hear them. You adjust the draped fabric over your shoulder, a deep red stola that marks you as someone in the Emperor's household, but not someone with, voting rights about anything that matters. As a concubine in Nero's palace, your world is both impossibly luxurious and unbelievably precarious. A combination historians love to describe as complex, which is academic shorthand for yikes. Outside your chamber, a servant carries a bronze tray of figs and honey-sweetened wine. He nods at you politely, the kind of nod that acknowledges your status, but also acknowledges that he'd never want your job. You can't blame him. Life in Nero's household is like living in a luxury spa that occasionally bursts into flames, metaphorically or literally, depending on the week. As you rise to your feet, your bare soles touch cool marble, the kind quarried from distant provinces conquered long before you arrived here. The stone holds the night's chill, a reminder that even the richest flooring can't win against Roman architecture's open-air enthusiasm. You wrap your arms around yourself as a soft breeze slips through the courtyard columns. Rome is alive at all hours, vendors arguing, cats yowling, distant laughter, the occasional clang that suggests someone has dropped something valuable and is pretending they didn't. You take a slow breath in, feeling the palace wake around you with its usual subtle background hum of intrigue. Nero's rule, historically speaking, is famous for 3 things: tyranny, drama, and an alarming number of questionable musical performances. One confirmed fact, your major historical fact for this section, is that Nero insisted on performing in public arenas, sometimes locking the doors so audiences couldn't leave. That's the kind of energy you're dealing with here. Think open mic night, but mandatory. As you move through the corridor, your fingers glide over a painted fresco. Swirling vines, mythic lovers, a satyr who looks like he knows secrets he should probably not be left alone with. The art style is vibrant, but you notice something subtle, a tiny, almost invisible inscription some palace artist scratched into the plaster. It's a list of days since the last imperial outburst. It's currently at 3. You whisper, promising, even though you know 3 is about as safe as it gets in this household. Your feet bring you toward the peristyle garden, where torchlight glows against mosaic floors. A few other women appear in the dimness, some concubines like you, others handmaidens or attendants. They offer soft greetings, the kind that feel genuine but also slightly exhausted. Everyone here lives in a constant blend of routine and suspense, like being in a long-running drama where the scripts keep changing and nobody ever gets their lines in advance. One woman hands you a small vial of rose water, telling you that Nero prefers subtle fragrances tonight. Another discreetly warns that he's been in a contemplative mood, which historically could mean anything from planning a poetry recital to declaring someone his sworn enemy for chewing too loudly. Scholars still debate whether Nero's unpredictability came from political paranoia, artistic insecurity, or the mecking, ancient equivalent of main character syndrome. You pause by a fountain shaped like a marble dolphin spitting water into a basin. It's surprisingly calming for a creature that looks both delighted and confused. You study your reflection, soft light on your cheek, hair pinned with delicate bronze clips, eyes slightly heavy the way everyone's are this late at night. You already sense what your day, evening, might involve. Being a concubine in Nero's Rome means learning to read the palace atmosphere like others read omens or weather patterns. You're meant to be ornamentation, comfort, companionship, and sometimes a soothing presence to a man who views himself as a misunderstood artistic genius. No pressure. It's like being hired as both a partner and a very patient audience member. One obscure cultural tidbit: concubines and wives often shared the same beauty routines, meaning you're probably wearing face cream made of barley, honey, and a suspicious amount of animal fat. It feels strangely moisturizing, though you try not to think too hard about it. A gentle breeze whispers through the open roof, brushing past you like an invitation. You glance toward the lit doorway at the far end of the colonnade, the one that leads deeper into the Emperor's private wing. You're expected there soon, but there's no rush. This channel is here to help people sleep, not sprint. So before we wander further into Nero's gilded maze, take a slow breath with me. In and out. If you're enjoying this sleepy stroll through imperial chaos, tap the like button in a soft, supportive way. And if you'd like more late-night wanderings through history, subscribe so you can drift off with us again. If you're awake enough, drop a comment telling us where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. Nero's palace wants to know its audience. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You walk deeper into the palace, following a corridor lit by wall-mounted lamps whose flames lean sideways whenever the night breeze slips through the carved stone latticework. Each step echoes softly, as if the building itself is politely clapping for you. Somewhere behind you, a servant murmurs a lullaby not for you, but for a sleepy child of one of the palace attendants. The tune drifts along the hall, a gentle reminder that in Rome, people sleep when they can, not necessarily when they want. You touch the wall as you pass. Smooth plaster, painted with scenes of pastoral calm, shepherds tending sheep, woodland gods napping in dappled shade, a deer who looks like it has absolutely no idea it's part of imperial decor. These scenes are meant to soothe palace guests, though scholars still debate whether Nero approved them because he loved rustic imagery, or because he forgot what real nature looked like. Either way, the art does its job. You feel yourself unwinding, even while knowing you're walking into a place where unwinding is rarely an option. Your stola trails gently behind you, brushing the marble like a soft whisper. Tonight, you're expected to join the Emperor's private gathering, a small circle of concubines, poets, and unlucky musicians who definitely did not sign up for overtime. Nero has these gatherings often, and each one feels like stepping into a theatrical rehearsal, where the director is equal parts genius and toddler with a shiny object. Still, it's part of life here. You breathe it in like someone trying to enjoy incense while ignoring the suspicious smoke cloud in the corner. You pass an open archway and glance into a storeroom where a pair of lute players practice under their breath. They're plucking strings softly, the way you might tap a fragile glass to see if it's cracked. Their eyes meet yours with a look that says, "If the Emperor asks, we've been practicing enthusiastically." Rome runs on talent, fear, and the ability to lie gracefully. You continue on, and as you approach the Emperor's private wing, the air shifts. The scent of burning cinnamon bark greets you, expensive, imported, and meant to symbolize sophistication. One major historical fact for this section: Nero loved exotic fragrances and often flooded rooms with perfume, a habit Pliny the Elder complained about in very dramatic terms. If air fresheners existed back then, Nero would have collected them all. At the entrance to the private hall, 2 Praetorian guards stand at attention. Their bronze armor gleams like molten gold, though one of them looks suspiciously like he's thinking about dinner. You offer a respectful nod. Concubines don't bow here. That's reserved for official ceremonies. Instead, you do the pleasant, harmless presence nod, a social art form every palace woman perfects. One guard steps aside to let you pass, and you slip into the small antechamber beyond. The room hums quietly with tension and candle smoke. 2 other concubines sit at a low table, sharing pomegranate seeds and the latest palace gossip quietly, politely. And with the precision of people who know exactly how thin the walls are, you join them, settling onto a cushioned stool. "Have you heard?" one whispers, eyes scanning the doorway. "The Emperor tried composing a new song on the kithara today." "Oh no," says the other. "Is it the tragic one, or the even more tragic one?" You offer a tiny smile. "Which one's worse?" They shrug in unison, the ancient Roman version of, "You had to be there." Palace humor is subtle, mostly because loud jokes can end careers, but you cling to the small absurdities, like the way the Emperor's pet peacock once chased a senator down the courtyard, or how one concubine swears Nero sleep talks in hexameter. These moments are threads of levity woven into the fabric of a life that often feels too tight at the seams. From behind a curtain, you hear a soft clattering, someone dropping a plate. Perhaps that's not unusual. The palace has a way of startling even its most seasoned staff. And then comes the obscure cultural tidbit. Romans believed certain sounds in the palace, like breaking dishware, were omens of social disharmony. Some servants even kept track of which items cracked and when. You try not to think about how many accidental prophecies happened during Nero's late-night banquets. You rest your hands on your knees, breathing in the cinnamon-scented air. There's a comfort in these pre-gathering moments. You aren't performing yet. You aren't being observed, evaluated, compared. For a brief sliver of time, you exist simply as yourself, tired, curious, and trying to decide whether Nero will be in a cheerful mood or a let's rewrite Roman music forever mood. Historians still debate whether Nero truly saw himself as a visionary artist or whether everyone around him was too terrified to tell him he wasn't. It's a debate that would probably make Nero furious. So you, keep that thought to yourself. A servant enters the antechamber with a small bow. You're summoned, he says gently, as if inviting you to a tea party rather than a performative whirlwind of imperial unpredictability. You rise with the others, smoothing your stola, adjusting a hairpin that feels slightly off-kilter, and offering one last grateful glance at the restful paintings on the walls. You'll miss this calmness in about 2 minutes. You follow the attendant toward the door that separates the quiet world from Nero's world. The curtain rustles like a breath being held, and you step through. You step into the emperor's reception chamber, where warm lamplight spills over polished marble, and shadows curl lazily in the corners like sleepy cats. The room is larger than most people's entire homes, yet it feels oddly intimate tonight. The air is thick with sandalwood, and the soft, lingering sweetness of imported myrrh. Someone definitely spent the afternoon lighting incense, like they were trying to impress a judgmental relative. Your feet glide across a mosaic floor depicting Apollo with a lyre, an on-the-nose choice of decor, considering Nero fully believed he was Apollo's spiritual successor. Scholars still debate whether he genuinely thought this, or if it was the ancient Roman equivalent of a very intense roleplay phase. Either way, the emperor committed to the aesthetic. A small cluster of guests gathers near the center of the room. Poets clutching scrolls, musicians tuning their instruments, a handful of concubines adjusting jewelry and pretending not to look nervous. You inhale slowly, letting yourself blend into the group like a delicate brushstroke in a much busier fresco. A servant approaches, offering a shallow silver cup of watered wine. You accept it with both hands, a quiet, graceful gesture that signals respect without desperation. Concubines never want to appear desperate. It's a bad look in a room where one person's mood swings can change the trajectory of several lives. You sip. The wine is light, a little tart, and probably chosen to keep everyone relaxed enough to smile, but alert enough to applaud enthusiastically when required. Rome excels at balancing pleasure with performance. You're expected to excel at both. Across the room, a musician tests a soft chord on his kithara. The note drifts upward, sinks gently, and settles like a feather. The man's hands tremble slightly. You sympathize. Nero is unpredictable, as weather, sometimes a gentle drizzle, sometimes a volcanic tantrum, sometimes a let's move the entire empire's schedule because I feel inspired day. You catch snippets of whispering from nearby guests. Do you think he'll perform tonight? He always performs. Yes, but will he be good? That's not the question. The question is whether he'll think he's good. You hide a smile behind your cup. The empire runs on taxes and fear, but gossip is definitely in the top 5. One major historical fact for this section: Nero wasn't just a casual hobbyist. He actually competed in Greek musical contests, and shockingly, he always won. Not because he was brilliant, but because judges valued their lives. It's impressive how motivating survival can be. A palace official suddenly enters, announcing in a voice smooth as polished marble, "The divine Nero approaches." You congratulate him silently on managing to sound both reverent and extremely tired. Everyone straightens. You adjust your posture, align your shoulders, soften your expression. You've learned the art of looking attentive without looking terrified. A tightrope walk performed nightly by the emperor's inner circle. Moments later, Nero appears. He glides in, wearing a flowing robe dyed imperial purple, the kind of color so expensive that the process of making it could ruin an entire city's budget. His hair is arranged in carefully curled ringlets. A small, golden wreath rests on his brow, as if he's moments away from starring in a mythological stage play. Which, to be fair, he might be. His eyes sweep across the chamber with that familiar mix of curiosity and, "I hope someone compliments me soon." Then he smiles softly, theatrically. Tonight might be a gentle night, you think, or at least the kind that doesn't end with someone being banished to a distant island. Nero seats himself on a cushioned platform and gestures for everyone to relax. You and the other concubines settle onto a curved bench draped with silk. It's comfortable enough that you suspect someone stuffed it with imported goose feathers. You shift your weight slightly, trying not to sink too deep. You need to stay awake. This is not the environment where falling asleep mid-performance ends well for anyone. Nero clears his throat dramatically, the way a person does when they want you to admire the sound of their throat. "Tonight," he begins, "we celebrate inspiration." You nod politely, pretending you didn't just mentally translate that to, "He's definitely performing tonight." A poet steps forward with a scroll, ready to recite something flattering. His hands shake so hard the parchment crackles like a fire. You can't help but feel sympathy. It's late. Everyone's tired. And the pressure to impress an emperor who once rewrote history to give himself better reviews is, well, it's a lot. As the poet speaks, his voice softening into rhythmic cadences, another obscure cultural tidbit surfaces. Romans believed poetry had quasi-magical properties, capable of invoking gods or altering fate if performed correctly. So technically, this poet is performing a ritual to keep himself alive. That's dedication. You listen, tilting your head just enough to appear thoughtful. Nero nods approvingly, always a good sign. But when the poem ends, the emperor lifts a hand. Silence falls instantly. You can practically hear the collective. Inhale. "My turn," Nero says. You resist the urge to send a supportive thumbs up. Some instincts must remain internal. Musicians shuffle to their places. A servant hands Nero his beloved kithara. He cradles it as if holding a fragile baby who also happens to be a ticket to immortality. Historians still debate whether Nero's music was genuinely tolerable or whether audiences merely pretended, since nobody left written reviews saying, "Actually, this was mid." The truth remains a mystery. Nero strums the opening note, rich, trembling, overly proud of itself, and the room leans in. The emperor begins to sing, voice wavering between emotional intensity and artistic confusion. You maintain a serene expression. You are a concubine of Imperial Rome. You've trained for moments like this. As the emperor's performance swells, you feel the atmosphere shift. Not dangerous, not tense, but oddly dreamy. Nero's voice, for all its flaws, has a hypnotic quality when combined with soft lamplight and late-night exhaustion. You let your breath slow. You let your eyes soften. And for a moment, as the notes wash over you, you forget the politics, the pressure, the fragility of your position. You are simply here, part of Rome's gilded night. You sit perfectly still, as Nero's final note hangs in the air like a decorative tassel. Impressive, a little extra, and completely impossible to ignore. The room remains quiet for a heartbeat, not because anyone is stunned by artistic brilliance, but because everyone knows there is a correct amount of time to wait before applauding. Too fast, and you seem insincere. Too slow, and you seem ungrateful. You count to 3, a safe, scholarly number, and gently bring your hands together in a soft, respectful applause. The sound spreads across the chamber in a controlled ripple. Nero beams. That's good, very good. You feel your shoulders relax a fraction, the way a well-trained gladiator might relax after realizing the lion is already full from lunch. You allow yourself a tiny exhale. Nero rises from his cushioned platform with a self-satisfied flourish. "Art," he says, pacing slowly, "is the lifeblood of Rome." He says this every time he performs, but you nod anyway. Everyone nods. Rome might run on politics, armies, and taxes, but in this room, it runs on Nero's self-esteem. A few musicians begin packing up, each one moving like a cautious deer. One trips slightly over his own robe. You watch him freeze as if he's waiting for lightning to strike. When nothing happens, he lets out the tiniest sigh of relief, so small it barely exists. You sip your watered wine, wondering how many collective sighs the palace contains in a single evening. From behind you, a concubine leans in and whispers, "That was better than last week." You whisper back, "Was it?" She shrugs, slightly. You both nod, the way people nod when talking about the weather or someone's new haircut, supportive but unconvinced. A servant arrives with a platter of candied dates. You take one, letting the sweetness melt on your tongue. It's a pleasant distraction from the tension that always hovers in Nero's presence, like the world's most anxious cloud. One major historical fact for this section: Nero loved extravagant foods during performances, banquets where dishes were served mid-song, so guests could marvel at how multitaskingly divine he was. Tonight is a simpler night, but the tradition lingers in little gestures. You watch Nero now as he moves toward a large bronze mirror mounted on the wall. It reflects his image in a slightly distorted shimmer, making him look taller, grander. He likes this mirror. You can tell because he pauses long enough to adjust a single curl on his forehead. You resist the urge to give the mirror a thumbs up for doing its best. Nearby, a poet begins reading the next piece. Something about the tragic love of a shepherdess and a river god. His voice is soft, lyrical, clearly practiced in the "I hope the emperor doesn't hate this" school of performance. You listen politely, though your eyelids feel slightly heavier than before. It's been a long day, an even longer evening, and poetry about river gods has a way of coaxing your brain toward dreamlike waters. But you stay focused. Falling asleep here would probably earn you a stern scolding at best, and a short exile to somewhere humid at worst. You perk up slightly when the poet describes the shepherdess weaving garlands of flowers so fragrant that they silenced all worry. You think to yourself, perhaps she lived in the countryside far from emperors. As the reading ends, Nero claps once, just once, but the sound is enough to send a shockwave of attention through the room. Another obscure cultural tidbit: in certain elite Roman circles, a single clap could signal approval, disapproval, or the desire for more entertainment. Tonight it means, "I have something to say," which instantly turns everyone into attentive statues. "I feel inspired," Nero announces, eyes brightening. "We should compose something new." You hide your internal groan behind a serene expression. New compositions mean long nights, possibly very long. Historians still debate whether Nero's creative bursts were genuine artistic flow or simply an emperor avoiding paperwork. Nero gestures to the musicians, who scramble back into position, like startled birds returning to a roost. He picks up his kithara again and strums a few exploratory notes. You notice the concubine beside you subtly adjust her posture, settling into a position designed for long-term sitting. You do the same. This is not your first composition session rodeo. The emperor hums softly, lost in his own creative fog. You allow your eyes to wander the chamber in the meantime. The tall bronze lamps flicker, casting elongated shadows that dance across the walls like restless spirits. The mosaic of Apollo gleams. Under the lamplight, the lyre strings in the artwork, catching highlights that make them appear almost alive. In the corner, a servant silently refills goblets, moving with such precision that you momentarily wonder if he trained with temple monks. You admire his steady hands. Meanwhile, a musician attempts to tune his instrument without making noise, a task that looks both impressive and deeply miserable. As Nero continues humming, your mind drifts to something oddly comforting, the rhythmic thumping coming faintly from outside. It's a servant pounding laundry, yes, laundry, nearly midnight, because palace schedules are suggestion-based rather than fixed. The sound is slow, steady, heartbeat-like, soothing. You lean into the rhythm, letting it ground you. Then suddenly Nero snaps his fingers, startling everyone. "Yes, play this," he demands, launching into a melody that sounds like it's trying to climb a ladder with only one shoe. The musicians scramble to follow. You wince, internally at a particularly ambitious high note, but outwardly you keep a soft, half smile. It's your palace face, pleasant, supportive, and hinting that you're awake even when your soul is somewhere near the laundry courtyard. As the music haltingly forms itself into a piece, the emperor closes his eyes dramatically. You watch him, wondering if he's imagining himself performing in front of thousands, or simply thinking about snacks. Finally, after what feels like a very long and very polite eternity, Nero lowers the kithara. "A good beginning," he declares. You exhale softly again, just slightly. You've survived another round, and as the chamber returns to a gentle murmur of movement and conversation, you realize the night is still young, by palace standards. You ease back into your seat as the room shifts into the looser, post-performance phase, the part of the evening where people breathe again, conversations blossom cautiously, and everyone pretends their nerves aren't still buzzing like poorly tuned lyres. You cradle your cup of watered wine between your palms, letting the cool metal ground you. For a moment, you feel almost normal, as if you're part of a gathering of artists instead of a very elaborately dressed survival seminar. Nero lounges on his raised platform now, reclining on an embroidered cushion depicting tiny dolphins leaping through waves. Of course, Nero's cushion has dolphins. One major historical fact for this section. Nero adored Greek culture so passionately, he tried to turn parts of Rome into his personal Athens, complete with Greek-style competitions, architecture, and decorative motifs. Dolphins, theatre masks, lyres, Greek everything. If Wi-Fi existed, he'd have set his homepage to GreekCultureFanForum.net. A servant approaches with a tray of tiny pastries dusted in honey. You take one, not because you're hungry, but because declining food in front of an emperor is risky business, unless you have an excuse like, "I'm currently on fire." The pastry is soft, warm, and sticks to your fingers just enough that you need to discreetly lick the honey away. The concubine beside you copies you, then gives a slight nod of solidarity. Palace life is 20% glamour, 80% shared micro-struggles. From the far side of the chamber, Nero lifts his hand in a languid, beckoning gesture. Oh no. He's calling someone forward. You instinctively straighten, smoothing your stola, hoping he means literally anyone else tonight. But then his eyes meet yours, not intensely, not lovingly, but with the casual interest of someone picking a card from a deck. You rise gracefully and step toward him, the way one might approach a lion who seems full but not quite full enough for comfort. Your sandals whisper across the marble. The entire room's attention tightens around you like a cinched belt. Nero gestures for you to sit nearer, on a lower cushioned stool beside his platform. You lower yourself carefully, maintaining that delicate balance of confidence and deference. Concubine etiquette is essentially, be lovely but not presumptuous. A task similar to holding a candle in a windstorm while pretending you're thrilled about it. He studies you for a moment, head tilted, curls arranged just so. You listened well tonight, he says, his tone drifting between compliment and declaration. I can always tell who truly appreciates music. You smile gently. Your voice carries emotion beautifully. That is the safest possible sentence. It complements his passion without making claims about technical quality, a verbal tightrope blessed by every concubine before you. He seems pleased. Emotion, he repeats, gesturing broadly, is the essence of art. Rome will remember that when it remembers me. You nod. You do not mention that Rome might remember other things first, like fires or political chaos. Scholars still debate whether Nero understood how history actually works, or whether he just assumed future generations would read his autobiography and call it gospel. Nero leans closer. His voice softens, almost contemplative. Tell me, he asks, do you prefer poetry or music? Ah, a trick question. The kind with 20 correct answers and one fatal one. You consider for half a heartbeat, then reply warmly, music, my emperor. It speaks, even when words fail. This is both flattering and non-committal. It implies emotional intelligence but avoids ranking his poetry. A concubine's version of expert diplomacy. He smiles slowly. A good sign. Maybe even a very good sign. The emperor signals a musician forward, and a young man with nervous eyes approaches holding a small hand drum. He begins tapping a gentle rhythm, not a performance, just background texture, soft pulses like distant footsteps. You let the sound settle into your chest. Do you dance? Nero asks suddenly. You freeze for a microsecond, but only on the inside. Outwardly, you maintain perfect tranquility. I do, you reply, though only when the music invites it. The emperor chuckles, a soft, breathy sound you rarely hear. Very well phrased. He gestures toward the floor, and the drum beat shifts into a slow, swaying rhythm. This is fine. You can do this. Dancing in the emperor's presence is something every concubine must do at some point, though you always hope that point comes after at least 2 cups of courage. You rise. The fabric of your stola trails behind you like a soft red tide, catching the candlelight in ripples. You let your body sway gently, gracefully, nothing flamboyant, nothing suggestive. Just slow, fluid movement that matches the sleepy cadence of the drum. Your arms float like drifting leaves. Your steps stay small and grounded. You move like someone inviting calm into the room. Guests watch with quiet fascination, though you can tell a few are admiring your ability to dance while also calculating the safest emotional path through imperial attention. The palace is filled with multitaskers. Another obscure cultural tidbit drifts into your mind. Elite Roman women sometimes practiced light, elegant dances in private as part of social training, though public dancing was frowned upon. Being a concubine means living in the loopholes of etiquette, allowed to be graceful, but only in ways that please the right spectators. You finish your gentle turn and bow your head slightly, letting your hairpins catch the glow of nearby lamps. Nero claps once soft, approving. Relief pours through you like warm bath water. Lovely, he says. You have harmony in your movements. Thank you, my emperor. He leans back, satisfied, attention shifting to the next performer, the next poem, the next whim. You step away quietly, returning to your cushioned bench with calm, purposeful steps. You made it through another moment of imperial spotlight without slipping, stumbling, or saying something historically regrettable. A small triumph, as you settle back into place, heart easing into a steady rhythm again. You realize something. The night may be far from over, but you've earned a few breaths of peace. You sink back into the curve of your cushioned bench, letting your pulse slow as the next performer steps forward. A timid young flutist who looks like he would apologize to his own instrument if it squeaked. The chamber relaxes again, its mood softening like cooling wax. A servant dims a few lamps, turning the atmosphere amber and dreamy. Even the shadows seem to sigh. You glance toward the silk curtains at the back of the room, tall, pale, and moving gently with the draft that sneaks in from the garden. Those curtains hide smaller corridors and private alcoves, where whispered conversations bloom like nighttime flowers. The palace is full of places meant for secrets, and you've learned to read the delicate choreography of glances and footsteps to know which ones matter. As the flute begins its trembling melody, you notice two senators murmuring near one of the curtains. Their expressions are carefully neutral, meaning they're discussing something important, perhaps a debate in the Senate, perhaps a decree being drafted, or perhaps, based on the way one keeps glancing at Nero, they're simply trying to predict which political headache they'll wake up to tomorrow. One major historical fact for this section. Nero often involved himself in state affairs only when he felt like it, leaving senators to handle practical governance while he focused on performances. Rome functioned on a mixture of bureaucracy and hope. You tilt your head, pretending to admire the flute music while casually observing the small swirls of palace dynamics. Concubine beside you whispers, "They're worried about taxes again." You whisper back, "Aren't they always?" She nods. Apparently someone proposed lowering grain prices. That sounds nice. She gives you a look. Nice things terrify them. You hide your smile behind the rim of your cup. Politics in Nero's palace is like juggling torches in a linen warehouse. Every action feels risky, and nobody wants to be caught holding flames when things go wrong. The flute continues its sweet, wavering tune, and Nero reclines with his eyes half closed, perhaps drifting into artistic contemplation, or perhaps calculating which bathhouse he wants rebuilt next. Scholars still debate whether Nero's construction projects were acts of creativity or boredom-fueled whims. His architectural moods were as unpredictable as his performances. Your shoulder relaxes. For the first time tonight, you feel yourself drifting not asleep, but comfortably detached. The flute's melody curls around your ears like a gentle ribbon. You let it wrap you, soften you. Then, the curtain behind you rustles. A handmaid slips in and kneels beside two concubines, whispering urgently. Their eyes widen for a fraction before their expressions return to calm masks. One of them glances toward you, curious, hesitant, then whispers something back to the handmaid, who bows and vanishes. You raise an eyebrow slightly. The concubine leans close, her voice softer than falling dust. It seems Poppaea is returning from her trip early. You blink. Poppaea, Nero's wife. Beautiful, sharp, powerfully influential. Her presence rearranges the palace atmosphere, like someone shifting a heavy piece of furniture. When she is near, concubines behave differently. Senators speak more cautiously, and Nero's moods become harder to read. It's like living under a second imperial moon, bright, elegant, and capable of altering tides. That's soon, you murmur. Yes, she replies, eyes lowering. Tonight, early. You feel a subtle shift in your spine, not fear exactly, but an instinctive tightening like the moment before a mild storm. Nero opens his eyes just then, noticing the slight murmur among his attendants. "What is it?" he asks, not unkindly but with an edge of curiosity that can turn sharp quickly. The concubine, 2 seats down, speaks up gracefully. "We hear Poppaea may arrive tonight, my emperor." Nero blinks once, then twice. His expression softens in a way that surprises you, gentle, thoughtful, almost tender. "Ah," he says quietly. "Good. Good?" You exchange a glance with the women beside you. When the emperor feels something positive about someone else, everyone recalculates their emotional footing. The flute's melody continues, oblivious to the shift in energy. An obscure cultural tidbit comes to mind. Elite Roman women often traveled with retinues so large that their return required advanced preparation, fresh linens, scented oils, new arrangements of flowers. If Poppaea is truly returning tonight, the palace will bustle like an anthill before dawn. You take a slow breath, steadying yourself. Life in the emperor's household requires flexibility. Schedules change, priorities shift, people arrive earlier than expected, and concubines must maintain grace through it all. Nero rises suddenly, interrupting the flutist mid-note. "Prepare the guest wing," he tells a servant. "She will want her usual comforts." The servant bows so low he nearly folds in half and scurries off. The emperor then turns to all of you. "Enjoy the music," he says, almost distractedly. "I must think." And with that, Nero slips through a side passage, leaving the room in a haze of sandalwood and speculation. You watch the curtains sway behind him and think. The palace was already a shifting world. Now it's about to shift again. You settle deeper into your cushion, letting the flutist play you through the transition. Tonight is far from over. The moment Nero disappears behind the curtain, the chamber exhales. Shoulders drop, spines relax. A few musicians subtly adjust their grips in ways that say, "Thank the gods." Even the lamps seem to flicker more lazily, relieved to no longer perform for imperial attention. You lean back slightly, letting the tension loosen from your chest. The concubine beside you murmurs, "When the emperor leaves a room, it's like the temperature changes." "Yes," you whisper back, warmer and less vertical. She stifles a tiny laugh, covering it with a sip of wine. With Nero gone, the musicians begin playing a less structured piece, soft, meandering notes that feel like someone humming to themselves while folding laundry. You feel your heartbeat fall into rhythm with it. Across the chamber, a few guests migrate into smaller conversational groups. The senators begin whispering again, now with more animated gestures. A pair of poets quietly compare scrolls. One musician carefully removes a splinter from his finger, with the same concentration one might apply to drafting new foreign policy. You allow yourself to stretch your toes beneath your stola, tiny flexes hidden by fabric. It's not much, but in a palace where posture is currency, private comfort feels luxurious. One major historical fact for this section. Imperial palaces were staffed around the clock. Servants moved through corridors at all hours, replenishing lamps, sweeping floors, carrying messages, and ensuring the emperor's whims, nighttime or otherwise, were answered immediately. So even though it's deep into the evening, the palace still hums with quiet motion. You hear it now, the soft patter of sandals, the whisper of doors, the gentle clink of metal trays. A servant glides past carrying a bowl of rose-scented water, probably headed to refresh some chamber in preparation for Poppaea. You watch him go, imagining the flurry of activity in the Poppaea. Eastern wing, linens being shaken out, perfume burners lit, handmaids organizing jewelry boxes with the focus of military logisticians. The concubines near you begin quietly speculating. Do you think she'll stay long? Probably. Should we prepare gifts? Better to wait, someone says with practiced wisdom. Gifts too early look like flattery. Gifts too late look like fear. Gifts at the wrong moment look like treason. You nod. That tracks. You've seen Poppaea a handful of times. She has a presence that walks into a room several seconds before her body does. She's refined, intelligent, and famously persuasive, qualities that make life interesting for anyone sharing a household with her husband. Life in the Emperor's orbit already requires careful self-editing. With Poppaea present, the editing becomes meticulous. An obscure cultural tidbit floats through your mind. Roman elite women often scented their hair with oils steeped in flowers or spices. Poppaea favors jasmine. You remember the scent from her last visit. It lingered for hours, drifting through rooms long after she left, like a gentle reminder to behave. As musicians shift into a slightly livelier tune, you rise from your cushion and drift toward the side of the chamber, not leaving, just stretching your legs with plausible deniability. A few guests have begun wandering as well, creating pockets of quiet conversation. You pause beside a tall bronze statue of a nymph pouring water from a jug. You touch the cool metal, grounding yourself. The palace may shift, but the statues never do. They simply witness. Behind you, a poet mutters to another. Do you think the emperor will want to rehearse later? The reply, if he does, may the gods grant us stamina. You smile faintly. The palace is a strange mix of luxury and exhaustion, like living in a very elegant waiting room with unpredictable appointments. A handmaid approaches you with a small wooden tablet. For you, she says softly. Your stomach flutters. Notes in the palace can mean many things. You unfurl the tablet. It's simple, neat, written in a clear, practiced hand. You may retire to your chambers. Rest well. No signature, but you know who sent it. You exhale. Relief pools in your muscles, warm and gentle. Permission to leave early is a kindness, especially on a night of shifting moods and unexpected arrivals. Maybe Nero is being considerate. Maybe he's preoccupied. Or maybe he simply remembered he has a wife returning and prefers his concubines to be well rested and out of the way. Historians still debate whether Nero's flashes of kindness were genuine or strategic. You suspect the truth is like Roman wine, diluted, blended, and a little unpredictable. You bow your head to the handmaid in thanks. As you begin walking toward the exit, the palace's nighttime symphony greets you again. Soft footsteps, murmurs, distant laughter, the hum of luxury twined with danger. You slip behind the silk curtain, feeling it brush against your shoulders like a sigh. The air in the corridor is cooler, calmer. Your chambers await. You walk down the long corridor with slow, careful steps, as if the marble floors themselves might be listening. The palace at night feels different than it does during the day. Calmer, yes, but also more revealing. Without the noise of daytime bustle, you can hear the building's softer language, the faint creak of wooden door frames cooling, the flutter of distant drapery, the muted slap of sandals against stone as servants hurry out of sight. Your stola brushes gently around your legs like a tame flame. You pass a row of tall, narrow windows, each framing a slice of Rome outside. The city glows in the distance, lamps flickering like tired stars, taverns murmuring with late-night laughter, watchmen's torches weaving slow patterns across the streets. Rome never sleeps, but it does yawn occasionally. As you near your chambers, you smell something unexpected. Lavender. You pause. A handmaid steps from your doorway, carrying a basket of spent herb stems. She bows and says softly, "Your room has been prepared for rest." "How thoughtful," you reply. "Yes, my lady. The emperor insisted the concubines sleep well tonight." You raise an eyebrow. "Nero? Concerned with rest?" It's like hearing that a tiger has decided to try vegetarianism. Scholars still debate whether Nero had moments of genuine softness, or whether those moments simply aligned with his own shifting emotional tides. Either way, you're not complaining. Your chambers feel like an exhale. Warm lamplight spills over plaster walls painted with gentle floral scenes. A low bronze brazier glows faintly in one corner, radiating that cozy warmth you imagine gods hoard for personal use. Your bed, simple but comfortable, has been made with fresh linens that smell faintly of lavender and something sweeter, maybe chamomile. You glide across the room and touch the linen with your fingertips. Soft, cool, smooth. A luxury that many Romans never experience, especially not the city's poor who sleep on straw pallets or nothing at all. That's the strange duality of your life. luxury and lack of freedom braided tightly together, like a rope you're always balancing on. A bronze mirror hangs nearby. You glance into it not to admire, but to orient yourself. Your hairpins are slightly crooked from the evening's dance. You pull them free one by one, feeling each pin release a tiny knot of tension. Your hair falls softly over your shoulders. As you unwind, one obscure cultural tidbit wanders into your thoughts. Wealthy Roman women often slept with thin silk wraps around their hair to keep it styled. Concubines sometimes followed this practice, though you personally find the wraps itchy and slightly ridiculous. Tonight, you let your hair breathe. It deserves freedom, even if you don't always get much of your own. You move to the small wooden table near your bed, where a bowl of warm water waits. You dip your fingers in and splash your face. The water smells faintly of mint leaves, refreshing enough to clear the last traces of candle smoke clinging to your skin. You sink onto your bed with a grateful sigh. The mattress dips just enough to feel welcoming. Across the room, a single oil lamp flickers, casting elongated shadows on the walls, shadows that dance like silent performers in a play you don't have to watch. You lie down fully, feeling the weight of the evening followed by the gentleness of this quiet moment. The palace continues humming beyond your walls, muffled footsteps, distant voices, the soft clatter of objects being prepared for Poppy's arrival. But here, in your small corner of the world, you feel insulated, safe enough to breathe deeply. As you inhale, you catch the lavender again. As you exhale, you let go of tension you didn't realize you were carrying. Historians still debate what concubines truly felt in these moments, whether they embraced the comfort or held it at arm's length, knowing how fragile favor could be. You're not sure yourself, but right now, exhaustion wins, comfort wins, quiet wins. You close your eyes just long enough to feel sleep flirt with you but not quite claim you. Tonight, you want to remain aware. Tonight, there is too much shifting. And as the palace prepares for a new dynamic with Poppy's return, you let the quiet of your chambers become your small sanctuary. You will need rest, but you're not done yet. Sometime later, minutes or hours, you aren't sure you awaken to a faint sound. A soft, polite tapping at your door. Not urgent, not aggressive, the kind of knock someone uses when they're hoping you're awake but afraid to assume. You sit up slowly, rubbing your eyes. The lamp in the corner has burned lower, casting a warmer, softer glow across your chamber. Your hair hangs loose around your shoulders. Your stola has wrinkled slightly. You don't feel embarrassed. Everyone looks mortal at this hour. You slide from the bed, your bare feet sinking into the woven rug. You pad quietly to the door and open it just enough to see who stands outside. A young servant no older than 15 bows deeply. "Forgive the disturbance, my lady," he whispers, "but you're requested." Your stomach tightens, not in fear, but in that familiar, weary anticipation. Requested at midnight could mean several things. A message from the Emperor, a gathering in another chamber, or a practical need from one of the palace women. "By whom?" you ask softly. "Lady Poppy." "Ah." Your breath steadies. You should have predicted this. Poppy has returned sooner than expected, and as one of the Emperor's favoured concubines, you are someone she likely wants to speak with personally, whether to establish boundaries, gather information, or simply assess your presence. Elite Roman households thrive on careful introductions and calculated first impressions. "Lead the way," you say quietly. You follow the servant into the corridor, the cool marble awakening your senses. The palace feels different now, still calm, but charged with a quiet electricity, a shifting of roles, a rearranging of gravity. You're led down a side hallway lit by small oil lamps, spaced far apart. The shadows here stretch longer, darker, deeper. You walk with measured steps, your heartbeat steady but alert. One major historical fact for this section: Poppy Sabina was known for her beauty, intelligence, and influence. Ancient writers, even the ones who disliked her, agree she could sway Nero with remarkable ease. Some credited her with political insight, others exaggerated her power. Scholars still debate her true role, amazed by how much documentation and rumor blur together. Your path ends at a doorway draped with soft gold curtains. The servant bows and steps back, leaving you alone. You part the curtains. Inside, the room is warm, well lit, and fragrant with jasmine, the exact scent you remembered. Poppya's retinue has already arranged her belongings. Silk cloths, polished bronze mirrors, rows of tiny glass bottles holding perfumes and oils, everything in perfect order. And there she is. Poppya stands by a tall bronze lamp, her hair loose, cascading in perfect waves down her back. She wears a pale green garment that seems to absorb the lamplight and glow. Her presence is so controlled, so serene, it almost feels otherworldly. She turns toward you. Her expression is neutral, not hostile, not welcoming, simply observant. "You're one of his favored ones," she says in a voice soft enough to lull someone into telling the truth. You bow your head respectfully. "I serve as I am commanded." Poppya studies you with eyes that read far more than your face. Eyes that assess posture, tone, breath. She steps closer, stopping a few feet away, close enough to read your intentions, far enough to maintain dominance. "You were present tonight," she says. "Yes, my lady." "And how was he?" You choose your words with the careful precision of a jeweler selecting gemstones. "In good spirits, focused on music." Her eyebrow lifts slightly. "Only music?" "For the most part." She smiles a small, knowing smile. Not unfriendly, not warm. Something in between, with edges. "He is softer," she murmurs when he is indulged. You remain still, smooth, balanced. Poppya steps past you, running her fingers along the rim of a polished water basin. "Tell me," she says, "what tone filled the palace tonight? Calm, chaos, performance?" Her hand pauses. "Or anticipation?" You inhale slowly. "A mix, my lady. But mostly gentleness." And this appears to please her, or at least satisfy her curiosity. She turns to face you fully. "Good," she says. "Then tomorrow I will speak with him." You bow slightly. "Shall I leave you to rest?" Poppya's gaze softens, just a fraction. "Not yet. I prefer to know the women near him. You may sit." You settle onto a cushioned bench. Poppya sits opposite you, crossing her legs with effortless elegance. She studies you again, this time not as a threat, but as a piece of the larger palace puzzle she intends to rearrange. An obscure cultural tidbit drifts in. Elite Roman women often engaged in subtle social diplomacy by hosting late-night conversations with household members, gathering alliances quietly. You suspect Poppya is assessing not just you, but how you fit into her return. She finally speaks, voice low and deliberate. "Tell me one thing, truthfully." "Yes, my lady." "Do you fear him?" You feel the weight of the question. You feel the palace walls lean closer. After a long breath, you answer softly. "I respect the power he holds, and I have learned to move carefully near it." Poppya's lips curve. A wise answer. She stands slowly. You rise as well. "You may return to your chambers," she says. "You will be summoned tomorrow." You bow deeply, then turn to leave. As you walk out, the jasmine fragrance lingers in your hair, weaving itself into your thoughts. Historians still debate whether Poppya was manipulative, misunderstood, or simply surviving in a world built on fragile power. Tonight, you feel a strange kinship with her two women, navigating a palace where every step must be intentional. You return to your room with quiet steps. The night is deepening, and the palace's story is only just beginning to unfold. You fall onto your bed again gracefully in theory, clumsily in practice. The jasmine from Poppya's chamber still clings to you, lingering like a guest who hasn't realized the party is over. Your limbs feel heavy, as if the palace added extra gravity just to be dramatic. You close your eyes for a moment, but sleep doesn't come. Instead, the conversation replays in your mind like a quiet chorus. Poppya's questions, her composure, her careful weighing of every syllable you spoke. The palace landscape has shifted. You can feel it in the air the way sailors feel storms long before they reach shore. Nothing dangerous yet, but definitely directional, strategic, intentional. Poppya's return has realigned invisible threads, and you are now woven into them whether you meant to be or not. You lie there listening. The palace is oddly alive for this hour. Distant footsteps. A door sliding open. The scrape of a chair. A muffled yawn. Soft conversations in languages you don't quite recognize. slave dialects from far provinces. A low hum of activity as Poppier's retinue continues their midnight settling. Below your window, someone is feeding coals into a brazier. The soft clink of metal tongs is strangely soothing. You roll onto your side, adjusting your stola into a comfortable bundle beneath your cheek. The linen whispers faintly against your skin. You breathe in lavender, out jasmine, in quiet tension, out, mostly quiet surrender. But just as your body begins to melt, there's another sound. This time, not knocking, just a soft tap-tap along your doorframe. The kind used by servants who don't want to disturb you but also definitely need to disturb you. You sit up, smoothing your hair, and call softly, "Enter." The door opens to reveal another servant, not the boy from before, but a young woman with steady eyes and a tray in her hands. She bows slightly. "My lady," she whispers. "I come with a message from the Emperor." "Ah, of course. Is it urgent?" you murmur. Her expression says, "Yes," but her voice says, "Perhaps. He wishes to assure you," she begins carefully, "that your presence tonight was appreciated." "That's it? Appreciation? At this hour?" You blink, unsure whether to feel relieved or wary. Nero's feelings can drift like smoke, pretty from afar, but suffocating up close. "Thank you," you say, soft and polite. The servant steps forward and places the tray on your table. On it, a tiny silver cup filled with warm spiced milk. A gesture of comfort. A gesture of favor. Possibly a gesture of "please stay loyal," though he'd never phrase it that way. You bow your head, and the servant slips out as silently as she came. You lift the cup. It smells of cinnamon and honey luxury, disguised as warmth. You sip it slowly, letting the sweetness soften your thoughts. The milk leaves a pleasant warmth spreading down your throat and into your chest. One major historical fact for this section: spiced milk and honey were common Roman bedtime drinks among the wealthy. Writers even described them as sleep potions, though that's a glamorous way of saying warm milk is relaxing. You finish half the cup, then set it aside. Sleep finally curls around your shoulders with gentle insistence. Before you lie down again, something catches your eye. A faint glimmer near your door. A wax tablet. Someone must have slipped it underneath while you were drinking. You pick it up, heart tightening slightly. Notes in the palace are like weather patterns, sometimes harmless, sometimes warning signs. You tilt the tablet to the lamplight. The message is short. Be cautious tomorrow. Conversations shift quickly when power returns. No signature, no mark, just clear, quick handwriting. You stare at it, feeling that old palace sensation, part warning, part puzzle, part very inconvenient truth. Historians still debate. You whisper to yourself whether palace intrigue was constant or only felt constant. You set the tablet aside. Whoever sent it either wants to help you or unsettle you. Possibly both. This palace thrives on dual meanings. You slide beneath your linens, letting the fabric cool against your skin. You exhale slowly. The jasmine fades, the lavender returns, and at last your eyelids grow heavy. One obscure cultural tidbit comes to mind as you drift. Romans believed that dreams could be messages from gods, omens, warnings, blessings. You wonder what dreams Nero sees at night. Or Poppier. Or you. You take one final breath, the palace hums, and sleep finally begins to gather you in its arms. A soft rustling wakes you, not a loud sound, but the gentle shuffle of someone trying very hard not to disturb you. You blink slowly, letting the world come back into focus, one soft edge at a time. Your chamber is washed in a faint grey-blue glow, that in-between light that says dawn is close but hasn't quite made up its mind. A handmaid stands near your table, adjusting the oil lamp and folding your stola with the kind of care usually reserved for sacred relics. When she realizes you're awake, she dips her head apologetically. "Forgive me, my lady. I wish to prepare your things before the palace stirs too loudly." You sit up, rubbing the sleep from your eyes. Your body feels heavy in that pleasantly disoriented way, like you fell through a soft cloud and landed gently on your mattress. For a moment, you don't remember where you are. Then memory returns. Poppier's jasmine. Nero's spiced milk. The wax tablet's warning. Has the palace begun moving already? You ask quietly. She nods. Yes, my lady. Lady Poppeia's retinue arrived with more baggage just before dawn. The corridors are lively. You stifle a laugh. Lively is polite servant code for chaotic, but professionally so. You rise, stretching your arms slowly overhead, feeling the satisfying pull of muscles that spent too long performing stillness last night. The handmaid steps forward with your morning wrap, a thin, soft garment meant for private wear. You slip into it, and the smooth fabric sighs against your skin. A tray awaits on your table, figs, barley bread, and a small cup of watered wine. Breakfast à la palace, simple by imperial standards, but luxurious by most others. You sit, eating slowly. One major historical fact for this section. Romans commonly broke their fast with light foods. Fruit, bread, soft cheese. Heavier meals came later. Breakfast was more about maintaining energy than indulging appetite. As you eat, the palace sounds grow louder. Footsteps, voices, the rhythmic swoosh of brooms brushing stone, the distant clatter of amphorae being moved. You close your eyes, listening. It's a palace heartbeat. You're just finishing a fig when another sound threads into the morning chorus. A woman's voice. Clear, crisp, commanding. Poppaea. You freeze, instinctively. Not from fear, just caution. Poppaea has returned, and her presence carries weight. You hear her giving instructions to her attendants, her tone calm but decisive. She rises early, the handmaid murmurs. She always has, you reply. The handmaid nods, as if this is an accepted fact of nature, like sunrise or gravity. You're summoned, she says gently. You pause mid-breath. By whom? By the emperor, for the morning greeting. Of course, Nero has a routine sometimes, occasionally, on days when he feels imperial. Scholars still debate whether Nero followed structured habits or simply drifted through whatever seemed important at the moment. Today, apparently, morning greetings matter. You stand and let the handmaid finish preparing you. She twists your hair into an elegant knot, securing it with bronze pins. She drapes your stola over your shoulder, smoothing the pleats with practiced hands. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, calm, poised, slightly puffy-eyed from too little sleep. Normal palace morning. Before you leave, you glance at the wax tablet from the night before, still on your table, still carrying its quiet warning. Conversations shift quickly when power returns. You breathe out slowly and step into the corridor. The palace is fully awake now. Servants sweep, guards reposition, handmaids carry cloth-wrapped bundles of something fragrant. The sunlight climbs over the courtyard walls, painting everything with soft gold. You walk with measured steps toward the emperor's private hall, where you've been summoned hundreds of times before. But today feels different subtly, electrically different. Poppaea is back. Nero is aware, and the invisible tension in the palace is tightening like a drawn bowstring. As you reach the outer corridor, a servant announces softly, "The emperor will see you." You take a final breath, steadying yourself like a performer, stepping onto a stage you never auditioned for. Then you enter. You step into Nero's private morning chamber, where the light is soft and filtered through thin linen curtains dyed the color of early peaches. The room smells faintly of warmed olive oil, incense, and something sharper, fresh citrus, perhaps, crushed recently by a servant who is now probably praying they didn't bruise it unevenly. Mornings in the palace are quiet but tense, like the pause before an orchestra begins tuning. Nero reclines on a low couch, wrapped in a loose robe that suggests he got dressed with the help of someone who feared being too slow. His curls are less precise than last night. One flops rebelliously over his forehead, giving him the air of a man who considers himself deeply important, even when he looks like he just rolled out of bed. He lifts his gaze when you enter. His expression is unreadable, sleepy, thoughtful, maybe mildly dramatic. A normal imperial morning. "You're awake early," he says. His tone is neither warm nor cold, simply observational. "I rise when summoned," you reply gently, bowing your head with the soft grace expected of someone in your position. Your voice stays even, calm, dipped lightly in politeness. Nero studies you for a moment, his eyes narrowing just slightly, as if trying to remember the exact emotional tone he wants to adopt this morning. Scholars still debate whether Nero's moods were truly unpredictable, or whether he simply enjoyed keeping everyone slightly off balance. He gestures lazily to a seat near him. Sit. You obey. Lowering yourself onto a cushioned stool that feels warmer than it should, someone has clearly been tending it. He nods once, satisfied. A servant arrives with a tray of sliced fruit figs arranged in neat circles, pomegranate seeds scattered like rubies, and a wedge of cheese so soft it looks like it might sigh if touched. Nero waves it away. I've no appetite. The servant withdraws with the kind of careful backward steps someone takes when they want to avoid becoming an anecdote in Suetonius's next scandal chapter. Nero turns his focus back to you. You danced well last night, he says. A safe compliment. A safe start. Thank you, my emperor. He leans forward slightly, elbows on knees, fingers steepled. And you spoke with Poppaea, he adds, as casually as someone might comment on the weather. You keep your breathing steady. She summoned me, you say, quiet and respectful. I know. Ah, of course he knows. Nero's palace might be sprawling, but news moves through it like heated wine, fast, fragrant, impossible to ignore. You wait for him to say more. He does. She returned early, he muses. Earlier than I expected. Earlier than she said. His tone is soft, but there is iron filament woven through it. You choose your next words with care. She seemed eager to see you, my emperor. Nero hums a sound that could mean agreement, disagreement, irritation, or indigestion. He picks up a small bronze cup from the table and swirls the contents water, not wine. A morning choice, a thinking choice. Finally, he asks, what impression did she give? You feel your spine straighten. The entire palace could hinge on how you answer this one question. Titles, rooms, privileges, alliances, everything in this gilded maze is balanced on tone and timing. She gave the impression, you say slowly, of someone who meant to return with clarity, and perhaps expectations. Nero looks at you sharply. Expectations? She carries herself. You continue gently, as someone ready to resume her place. He leans back, exhales, then laughs softly. It's not a happy laugh. It's the kind a man makes when the universe hands him a puzzle instead of a prize. One obscure cultural tidbit about Rome, you think but do not say, is that imperial marriages operate on a different definition of peace. Instead, Nero stands suddenly, pacing a few steps. His robe sways like a dramatic curtain. I want you to tell me the truth, he says, stopping with his back to you. Do you think she disapproves of my performances? My art? You blink. That is, not the question you expected, but also entirely the question you should have expected from Nero. I think, you reply softly. She wants you to shine in ways that strengthen Rome, and she wants to ensure you are surrounded by loyalty. He turns, face unreadable. Loyalty, he repeats. Yes, my emperor. He steps closer, not threateningly, just intensely. He lowers his voice to a hush. Be honest with me. Do you trust her? You inhale slowly. The palace quiets around you. Even the distant footsteps fade. This is the moment the wax tablet warned you about. Conversations shift quickly when power returns. You meet Nero's gaze not boldly, not timidly, but with the steady softness of someone who understands survival. I trust, you say gently, that Poppaea acts with purpose. And purpose can be many things, not all of them against you. He studies you, really studies you. Then finally, his shoulders loosen. You choose your words well, he murmurs. I choose them for clarity, you say. He sighs long, weary, almost human. Then he gestures dismissively toward the door. You may go. Prepare yourself for luncheon. Poppaea wishes to speak privately with several attendants. I will summon you if needed. You bow deeply and retreat, keeping your pace slow and even until you exit the chamber. Only then do you allow yourself a real breath. The palace is a stage, and this morning, you performed perfectly. But you can feel it in the air. The day ahead will be anything but simple. The corridor outside Nero's chamber feels brighter than it did mere minutes ago, though not because the sun has risen any higher. It's brighter because you've just stepped out from the gravitational pull of a man whose moods form their own weather system. You walk slowly, letting your heartbeat settle into something normal. Normal for a palace anyway, which is something like calm with light tremors. You drift toward the east wing, where a handmaid had said Poppaea gathered her attendants. As you approach, the palace noise shifts. Gone are the clattering amphorae and shuffling footsteps of servants. Instead, you hear soft voices, women speaking in measured tones. The sound is crisp, controlled, and surprisingly warm. It feels less like a palace, and more like the enclosed world of a confident hostess arranging the morning. At the threshold of the east wing, a guard steps aside with a short bow. He doesn't announce you. Poppaea's attendants do not require formal fanfare. You slip inside. The room you enter is spacious, brightened by tall windows that let in the full spill of morning light. Sunbeams dance across polished bronze bowls, and vases filled with freshly picked flowers, jasmine, rose, and something else you can't identify, but smells faintly of honey. Poppaea's taste is unmistakable. Elegant without being gaudy. Soft but intentional. Several women sit together on wide cushions arranged in a semicircle. Handmaids. Advisors. Attendants. Poppaea's inner circle. They look up when you enter. Some nod politely. Some study you with open curiosity. One or two try and fail to hide the fact that they're assessing your presence like a chess player considering a newly added piece to the board. Poppaea herself sits at the center, poised on a low couch draped in pale fabrics that glow in the morning sun. Her hair is neatly arranged today, braided in a style that says, "I am the woman at the center of this world, and I didn't have to. Try." She turns to you and gestures gracefully. "Come," she says. "Sit beside me." You obey, lowering yourself onto a soft cushion. You notice she left a small space intentionally, just enough to invite you into her orbit, but not enough to appear overly familiar. Poppaea excels at spatial diplomacy. She studies you for a beat. Then, "I trust your rest was peaceful?" You nod. "More than I expected, my lady." A knowing smile curves her lips. The palace seldom allows deep sleep. Consider it a rare gift. Around her, a few attendants exchange subtle glances, some admiring, some wary. Being invited to sit beside Poppaea is not neutral. It is a gesture that carries weight, perhaps even envy. You feel their eyes on you, reading what this means. Poppaea lifts a crystal vial from the table, swirling the fragrant oil inside. "You were near the Emperor last night," she says lightly, as if commenting on the weather. "Yes, my lady. And this morning, only briefly." She nods, pleased, then leans back slightly. "Tell me about his mood." There it is. Not jealousy, not insecurity. Strategy. You answer truthfully but carefully. He seemed thoughtful, not agitated, more concerned with appearances than disputes. "Good," she murmurs. Then he is not bracing himself for conflict. She sets the vial down. A husband who is calm is simpler to influence. One major historical fact for this section: Poppaea Sabina was widely known even in her own time for shaping political outcomes through conversation rather than confrontation. Ancient writers describe her as persuasive, diplomatic, and deeply attuned to Nero's emotional winds. Some praised her, some vilified her. All agreed she understood power. Poppaea turns to the attendants. "We have much to prepare," she tells them. "The emperor must see that order has returned to his household." One handmaid asks, "Shall I send for the musicians, my lady?" "No." Poppaea waves her hand lightly. "Too early for theatrics." You refrain from smiling. "Send for fresh linens, incense, and fruits instead. And tell the steward gently, but firmly, that I want the garden fountain repaired today. It has dripped all night." A ripple of nods. Poppaea then returns her attention to you with a softer expression. "You handled yourself well last night. And this morning, you bow your head slightly. I only aim to serve where needed." She studies you again, far more intently this time. You feel the weight of her gaze, the kind that sees beyond posture, beyond politeness, beyond roles. Finally, she says, "I would like you to remain close today. Walk with me." You blink. "Of course, my lady." The other attendants glance at each other, a few lips tightened. A few brows lifted in surprise. Poppaea rarely invites new faces so quickly into her immediate retinue. Poppaea stands. You stand with her. Historians still debate, you think, whether Poppaea was gathering allies or eliminating threats. But the truth in this moment is simpler. She has chosen to draw you nearer. As the group shifts to attention, Poppaea steps forward and gestures for you to join her at her side. You do, and the palace, always sensitive to alliances, seems to hold its breath. You walk beside Poppaea through the east wing corridors, matching her pace with quiet precision. She moves with the calm confidence of someone who has never needed to raise her voice to make anything happen. Even the servants seem to glide out of her way rather than step. It's almost eerie, like the palace itself rearranges around her, making sure she never has to slow down. Sunlight streams in through high windows, casting warm beams across the mosaic floors. Poppaea's pale green garment catches the light with every step, glowing softly. You, by contrast, feel just a touch underdressed, though technically you're wearing garments more expensive than what half of Rome has ever touched. Poppaea breaks the silence first. You move gracefully in the mornings, she observes. You smile faintly. I move quietly until my mind wakes fully. A wise habit, she replies. Men speak too quickly at dawn. Women think first. You store the compliment carefully, the way a cautious person might store a precious jar of honey. Useful later. Sweet now. A handmaid approaches with a bundle of fresh linens. Poppaea inspects them with a single glance. Acceptable, she murmurs, and the servant beams, as if she's been praised by Minerva herself. You continue walking, hearing the faint echoes of staff preparing for the day. Somewhere, bronze dishes clatter as they're arranged for the luncheon. A scribe recites something under his breath. A distant dog barks from the courtyard, probably chasing one of Nero's prized peacocks again. Poppaea speaks lightly, but her words are sharp as fine needles. You handled the emperor's questions with care this morning. You keep your expression serene. His moods shift quickly. I aim to stay steady. Poppaea hums approvingly. Good. Steadiness is rare here. She gestures for you to follow her down another hallway, this one scented faintly with pine resin. She stops at a tall, carved door. A sculpted nymph leans out from the wood, as if listening. Poppaea pushes it open. Inside is a garden courtyard. You've seldom visited smaller than the main gardens. More intimate, enclosed by columns painted with delicate vines. A fountain sits in the center, dribbling water in slow, uneven drops. Ah yes, the drip she mentioned earlier. Annoying in the quiet, persistent. You follow her toward the fountain. It wasn't like this before I left, she says quietly. You kneel slightly and touch the stone edge. The seam is cracked. My lady, it likely widened with the colder nights. Poppaea considers the fountain as if it insulted her ancestors. Have the craftsman repair it today, and tell them to smooth the edge while they're at it. Last time, they left it rough. A handmaid bows and hurries off to deliver the message. Poppaea walks again, slower now, her fingers trailing lightly along a potted laurel tree. You know, she says, when I'm away from the palace, the emperor forgets some boundaries. Your breath steadies, carefully. She continues, voice utterly calm. He forgets who guides him, who keeps him steady, who keeps Rome steady. You understand instantly. Poppaea is not angry at other women. She is asserting her role, the strategist, the stabilizer, the person whose influence Nero respects even when he doesn't realize he's respecting it. You keep your words measured. Your presence changes the palace, my lady. Of course it does. She looks at you sharply, not unkindly, but sharply. That is why you must walk quietly, but never timidly. A breeze moves through the courtyard, shaking a few petals from a nearby jasmine vine. They drift down between you like tiny white feathers. She turns to face you fully. I called you last night to see how you would respond. Whether you panic, whether you flatter, whether you lie, you swallow softly. And what did you see? Poppaea's lips curve slightly. I saw a woman who understands subtlety and survival. That is, perhaps the most dangerous compliment you've ever received. One major historical fact for this section. Elite Roman women operated within invisible networks of influence, political salons, private meetings, whispered strategies. Their power came from conversation, alliances, and precision. Poppaea, especially, was known for this. Ancient sources describe her as brilliant at negotiating hearts, though whether that was praise or criticism depends on the writer. Poppaea begins walking again, and you follow. Today, she says, you will stay at my side. It will be noticed. That is intentional. You do not ask why. You simply remain quiet, absorbing the weight of the decision. Historians still debate. You think wryly, whether concubines gained power by proximity or by listening better than anyone else. Poppaea stops again, this time near a small marble bench where soft cushions have been arranged. She sits and gestures for you to join her. You sit. She studies the garden for a long moment before speaking. There is something I must ask you, she says softly. Your pulse quickens not in fear, but in anticipation of the palace's next turning point. Poppaea turns her gaze to you. When you speak to the emperor, do you speak carefully because you fear him, or because you understand him? The question hangs in the sunlit air like a suspended drop of water, shimmering, weighty, impossible to ignore. Poppaea's gaze lingers on you, steady, unblinking, almost serene in its intensity. The courtyard around you goes quiet, as if even the birds have decided it's best not to interrupt this moment. A breeze curls gently around the columns, carrying the faint scent of crushed jasmine. You sit with your hands folded in your lap. Heartbeat slow but deliberate, like someone approaching a sacred altar with no idea what offering is expected. Her question hangs there. Do you speak carefully because you fear him, or because you understand him? It is not a question about Nero. It is a question about you, your loyalty, your judgment, your place in the delicate geometry of palace power. You inhale, letting the air expand your ribs gently. When you exhale, your voice is steady, soft, but clear enough to be heard above the rustling leaves. I speak carefully, you say, because he listens carelessly. Poppaea's eyes narrow not in offense, but in recognition. You continue, and I choose my words with intention, because he reacts with emotion. That is not fear. That is understanding the landscape. She sits still, studying your face as if she can read footnotes behind your expression. Finally, she says, so you understand him. I understand him enough to move quietly through his moods, you answer, and enough to know he responds best when guided gently. Poppaea leans back, letting her spine curve elegantly against the cushion. Her shoulders relax a fraction, as though a question she's been carrying since last night has finally settled into place. You are smarter than most who enter this household, she says, and wiser than some who have lived here for years. You dip your head, accepting the compliment but not overreaching, because in this palace, every acceptance must be measured like spice added to a stew. Poppaea stands, smoothing the folds of her garment. You rise with her. She begins walking again, slow, thoughtful steps along the perimeter of the courtyard. You follow half a pace behind, as etiquette dictates. You should know something, she says, her tone shifting into something quieter, closer to confessional. The emperor is not cruel by nature, but he is sensitive, overly so. He bruises like fruit. A faint smile touches your lips. You've seen this firsthand. Nero swelling with pride over a single compliment, wilting over a perceived slight. And you? You ask cautiously. Do you guide those bruises? Poppaea stops walking, not abruptly, but with intent like a woman pausing at the exact point in a speech where she wants everyone listening. One major historical fact, she says, not as a historian, but as a woman who knows the truth of her time, is that an emperor's stability depends on who whispers to him in private. Seneca counseled him. Burrus directed him. And I steady him. You feel a ripple of understanding move through you. Poppaea's power is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is not the kind Nero flaunts. Her influence is the kind that sinks into decisions like dye into cloth. Subtle, permanent, unseen by most, recognized by all who matter. And what do you want from me? You ask softly. She turns toward you fully, the morning sunlight catching the gold flecks in her eyes. I want you, she says, to help me steady him. Your breath catches not in fear, but in realization. This is not merely an invitation. It is a draft into service, a shared mantle, a shared risk. Not by manipulation, she adds, sensing your thoughts, but by presence, by quietness, by knowing when to speak and when not to. Nero listens to you more than he realizes. An obscure cultural tidbit flickers through your mind. Roman households sometimes relied on trusted women, wives, concubines, sisters, to temper a man's impulses without ever being credited openly. History rarely names them, but their fingerprints lie beneath every decision. Poppaea steps closer. The air between you is warm with sunlight. I watched you last night, she says. I watched how you navigated him. I watched how you carried your calm. I need someone like that near me. Someone who doesn't stir chaos. Someone who understands that the emperor's moods decide Rome's fortunes. For a moment, the weight of her words presses on you. You, a concubine lodged somewhere between privilege and powerlessness, are now being asked to join the empress's private constellation of influence. Historians still debate whether Poppaea was manipulative or protective, whether she shaped Nero for personal ambition or to stabilize the empire, whether she was calculating or simply surviving. In this moment, you understand the truth is more complicated. Poppaea is not only protecting herself, she is protecting the palace, and she is choosing her allies carefully, very carefully. You bow your head, acknowledging both the offer and the responsibility. If it serves the household, you say softly, I will help where I can. Poppaea exhales, a tiny release of tension so subtle most would miss it. You don't. Good, she says. Walk with me again. And as the two of you move deeper into the courtyard, two women walking parallel paths, you realize you have stepped into something larger, quieter, more dangerous, and far more powerful than anything you expected when you first entered Nero's palace. The day has only begun. You follow Poppaea out of the courtyard and into the long colonnade, connecting the private wings to the heart of the palace. Sunlight slides across the marble floor in bright ribbons, catching on the mosaics that depict mythic beasts and heroic scenes, stories of men who conquered mountains and fought monsters, though none of them ever battled the kind of domestic politics you're currently navigating. The palace is busy now, not chaotically, but with a precise hum. Servants move in coordinated swirls, carrying cushions, arranging tableware, plumping linen, and whispering instructions to each other, like bees relaying messages in a hive. A pair of guards march past with synchronized steps. You feel the faint tremor through the column bases. Poppaea walks calmly through it all, untouched by the bustle. People step aside as though choreographed. You remain half a step behind her, the place she's chosen for you. Not beside her, that would signal equality. Not behind her, that would imply distance. But near. Close enough to be noticed. Close enough to be read as part of her circle. You can almost feel the whispers following you like small breezes. Why her? When did Poppaea choose a new attendant? She was with the emperor last night. Poppaea pretends not to hear. You pretend not to notice. Both pretenses are essential survival skills. At the far end of the colonnade, she slows. Tell me, she says without turning. What did the emperor ask you this morning? You keep your expression serene. He asked whether you approved of his art. She stops walking. The air stills. Then, she exhales, through her nose, quiet, controlled, but unmistakably annoyed. He always worries about that. You are important to him, you say gently. Poppaea doesn't smile. I am necessary to him. There's a difference, and she knows it. Necessary is steadier than beloved, more reliable, more powerful, and yet more exhausting. You walk a few more steps before she speaks again. What did you tell him? I told him you support what strengthens Rome. She glances at you. Clever. Not clever, you say softly. True. Poppaea studies you for another long moment, the way a general studies terrain before planning a battle. Then she continues walking. One major historical fact for this section. Nero and Poppaea's relationship was famously intense, politically charged, emotionally layered, and often turbulent. Ancient sources disagree wildly about whether Poppaea was a steadying force or a guiding flame. but all agree she understood Nero's inner world more deeply than most. In the next hallway, servants are arranging cushions for luncheon. The low dining couches are lined with fresh fabrics embroidered in gold thread. The entire room smells faintly of roasted poultry, herbs, and freshly baked bread cooling on long wooden trays. Poppaea surveys the setup with the precision of a general reviewing troops. "The cushions are too warm," she says. "Open the shutters." A servant rushes to obey. Sunlight pours into the room, brightening everything, making the gold thread sparkle like dust from Apollo's own lyre. "Good," Poppaea says. "The Emperor will be in a better mood if he feels the air." Then she turns to you. "When we dine, sit where I gesture. Not too close, not too far. Understand?" "Of course, my lady." She nods once, an approval so slight it's almost invisible. Nearby, 2 other concubines slip into the room. They curtsy to Poppaea, then look at you with carefully arranged expressions. Not jealousy, not hostility, just heightened awareness, like cats watching a new cat walk across their courtyard. Poppaea continues giving instructions to the staff. You step aside, and the concubines drift toward you. One whispers, "You walked with her?" "Yes." Their brows rise. Another murmurs, "It seems she's chosen you." You shrug delicately. "She has chosen many things today." The first concubine exhales in a soft, strained laugh. "Be careful. Her choices are blessings and burdens." You nod. You already know this. The palace runs on dualities, every gift wrapped around a knife. Every alliance tied with a knot you must learn to untangle gently. One obscure cultural tidbit floats into your thoughts. Elite Roman households often placed favored women, wives, concubines, daughters, near the empress not for rivalry, but for observation. You are being watched, evaluated, tested. It is a privilege disguised as scrutiny. Suddenly, a hush spreads across the room like a lowered curtain. Poppaea turns her head slightly. The emperor enters. Nero is dressed in a brighter robe than this morning, dyed a deep, commanding purple. His posture is straighter, his expression more controlled. His curls arranged by a handmaid who likely held her breath the entire time. He sees Poppaea first. His face softens in a way you've seen only once or twice, a look of someone beholding a favorite poem. "Poppaea," he says softly. "Domine," she answers with a gentle dip of her head. You step back instinctively, feeling yourself fade into the edges of the scene. Not invisible, but discreet. Present without intruding. Nero's gaze shifts briefly to you, an acknowledgement, not a summons. Then he returns his eyes to Poppaea. "Shall we dine?" She nods gracefully. Everything is prepared. They move toward the couches, slipping into their ritual of shared presence. Hers steady, his shifting. Their balance a dance only they know the steps to. A servant gestures where you should sit. You slip into place exactly where Poppaea intended. A breath, a pause, a new alignment of power begins to settle around the table like a quiet storm cloud, and as luncheon begins, you can already tell. Today's conversations will not be light ones. You settle onto your dining couch, arranged exactly where Poppaea signaled, near enough to observe, far enough not to intrude. The cushion sinks beneath you with quiet luxury, warming under your weight. A servant adjusts the folds of your stola so it drapes elegantly, almost artfully, though you suspect the real intention is to avoid wrinkles that might offend someone with a high-ranking eye. The table is low, lacquered, and strewn with small dishes. Jewels of pomegranate seeds, olives glistening with oil, roasted fowl carved into delicate slices, and little cheeses arranged like offerings to a household god. Nero lifts a cup of watered wine and swirls it absently, as though deciding whether this particular cup deserves to be part of history. Poppaea reclines at his side in perfect repose, her expression serene. You can practically feel the entire room calibrating itself to her emotional temperature. When she is calm, the palace is calm. When she is sharp, everyone becomes sharper. The servant pours fragrant broth into small bowls. The steam curls upward, carrying hints of leek, coriander, and pepper. You inhale quietly, letting the warmth brush your face. A simple comfort in a complicated room. Nero glances around the table, studying the arrangement of guests, as though checking the stage before a performance. His gaze lingers on you for a heartbeat, no tension, just acknowledgement. You bow your head slightly. Poppaea notices. She notices everything. Conversation begins in fragments. A senator clears his throat. The eastern provinces send their tribute early this season. A good sign for Nero interrupts with a lazy wave. Yes, yes. But what matters is whether they send artists. The senator blinks rapidly, recalibrating. Of course, Caesar. I will inquire. Poppaea's lips curve just barely. Whether amusement or warning, you can't tell. Scholars still debate whether Poppaea enjoyed watching senators wrestle with Nero's priorities or merely tolerated it as part of the imperial theatre. Your bowl is filled with broth. You sip, grateful for the warmth spreading from your chest outward. One major historical fact for this section. Romans reclined on couches for meals, leaning on their left arm while eating with the right. You adjust to the position. Familiar, but slightly tiring over time. Nero picks up a slice of roasted pheasant, holds it mid-air, then suddenly says, "Last night, the composition I created, Poppaea. You didn't hear it." Her tone is smooth. "I will hear it tonight." Nero brightens. "Yes, tonight. All shall hear it again." Your heart sinks gently but politely. Another performance tonight means another long evening of diplomacy, disguised as applause. Poppaea's voice remains serene. "But only after you rest," she says, touching his hand lightly. "Inspiration shrinks when exhaustion grows." Nero nods, letting her guide the moment. The room relaxes by a fraction. You observe quietly. This subtle redirection, this gentle containment, is what she meant earlier when she said she steadies him. A servant offers honeyed bread. You take a small piece, more out of social obligation than hunger. As you lift it to your lips, one of the concubines at the far end leans forward, speaking with calculated softness. "My emperor, the people speak often of your generosity." Nero perks up. Flattery, nectar to his soul. She continues. "They say your performances inspire them." Nero beams. Poppaea's eyes flick to the concubine, assessing whether this is harmless praise or a bid for attention. You sense the room tighten like a drawn bowstring. You chew your honeyed bread very carefully. The concubine presses onward, smiling. Perhaps a public festival? A celebration of your artistic gifts? Ah, there it is. A political suggestion disguised as admiration, the kind that can shift power if accepted. Nero lights up. "Yes, a festival," Poppaea cuts gently in. "But a festival requires planning, Caesar. Let us consider the timing carefully." Her tone is warm, not sharp. A soft hand on a volatile flame. Nero pauses. "Consider." "Yes, perhaps." The concubine lowers her eyes. You see both relief and disappointment ripple across her face. She reached for influence. She did not quite get it. Not yet. You sip another spoonful of broth, letting its warmth settle your nerves. One obscure cultural tidbit slips into your mind. Elite Romans often used meals as testing grounds, floating ideas, measuring alliances, nudging opinions, all while pretending to enjoy olives. This luncheon is no different. After a few quiet moments, Nero looks toward you again. "You spoke wisely this morning," he says. The room stops breathing. Poppaea remains perfectly still, not reacting outwardly, but listening with razor-sharp attention. You place your bowl down with slow precision. "I spoke only what I thought true, my emperor. And what you spoke," Nero continues, "helped me reflect." You nod. Not humble, not proud, just present. Nero smiles a small, genuine smile. "You have a calm voice." "I appreciate that." Poppaea's eyes flick to you, unreadable. Not anger, not jealousy. Calculation. She weighs every favor Nero grants, deciding whether it strengthens or weakens the balance she maintains. You lower your gaze respectfully. "I am honored, Caesar." Nero reclines again, satisfied. The tension eases. Poppaea resumes speaking of household matters, smooth transitions that prevent the emperor's mind from drifting into dramatic storms. You follow the rhythm of the conversation, reading tones more than words. Halfway through the meal, a small, startled sound escapes a servant. An amphora nearly slips from his hand. He catches it just in time, but the thud echoes. Everyone freezes. Nero's brows twitch. In ancient Rome, dropping an object near an emperor could be a very nervous experience. Poppaea speaks gently. Accidents happen. Continue. Nero exhales, tension dissolving. The servant bows so deeply his forehead nearly touches the mosaic floor. The luncheon continues. But beneath the elegant dishes, beneath the politeness, beneath the soft afternoon light, something restless hums in the air. You can feel it. Poppaea can feel it. Nero, especially, feels it. The palace is shifting again. And you are sitting at the very center of its delicate, glittering web. After luncheon, the palace disperses like warm sand running through fingers slowly at first. Then, with gathering momentum, senators retreat to shaded corners to complain about things they won't actually change. Musicians scurry off to tune their instruments, in case Nero suddenly demands an encore. Servants glide through corridors carrying dishes, scrolls, cushions, and secrets. Poppaea rises from her couch, with the fluid grace of a woman who has never once second-guessed a movement. Nero stays reclining, swirling the last of his wine in its cup, humming a tune, probably the new composition he intends to force on Rome later tonight. As Poppaea steps away from the table, she glances back at you, giving a gesture so subtle it's practically a shared thought. Walk with me. You rise immediately and follow her out of the hall, keeping your footsteps soft on the cool mosaic floor. The sunlight has shifted. The palace now glows in rich, late afternoon gold, the kind of light that makes every fresco seem more vivid and every floor more visible. Poppaea speaks first. You handled yourself well. You bow your head slightly. Thank you, my lady. She gives a faint, approving hum. Flattery irritates him if it sounds forced. Truth comforts him if it sounds pleasant. You understand the difference. A servant passing with a basket of linens nearly trips, trying not to stare at the two of you walking together. Poppaea pretends not to notice. You pretend you didn't notice him, pretending. The palace is a script of small performances stacked on larger ones. As you walk, you catch the scent of olive trees drifting in from a side courtyard. A pair of handmaids are arranging cushions beneath a pergola for Poppaea's afternoon rest. When they see her approach, they bow deeply, rearranging every pillow as though the fate of the empire depends on symmetry. Poppaea stops at the pergola entrance and turns to you. Sit with me. You settle onto a cushion beside her, not the closest spot, but the one she clearly wants you in. A place that signals association, but not threat. A handmaid pours cool water into a bronze cup and offers it to Poppaea. She drinks slowly, eyes half-lidded in thought. Then she sets the cup down and looks at you with the kind of focus that makes the rest of the courtyard dissolve. There is something we must discuss, she says. Your breath steadies. Of course. When I was gone, Poppaea begins, her voice quiet but edged like a polished blade. The palace felt looser, less anchored. The emperor drifted. You nod, carefully. He mentioned feeling uncertain. She tilts her head. About what? About being heard, being understood. Poppaea closes her eyes briefly, as if absorbing something heavy. When she opens them again, they're sharper. He fears being forgotten, she says. That fear drives his temper, his art, his decisions. You hesitate before speaking. He asks often whether others approve. And he always will, she replies softly, because he is surrounded by people who either fear him or need him, rarely people who balance him. You remain quiet, letting the words settle. Poppaea continues. You are calming, and unlike the others, you do not grasp for influence. She gives you a long look. That makes you more influential than you realize. You feel something shift beneath your ribs, part warning, part empowerment. One major historical fact for this section, Roman emperors often relied on soft influence from the women closest to them. Wives, mistresses, mothers, even trusted slaves. Many decisions historians attribute to emperors were actually shaped in private rooms like this one, by people like Poppaea. And perhaps now, by you. Poppaea leans in slightly. You must be careful, she says. When he favors you, others notice, others envy. You nod. I understand. But, she adds, her tone lightening, but her eyes not. You are also useful. You blink. Useful, my lady? Yes. Poppaea folds her hands in her lap. There are things he will not say to me. Not because he hides them, he hides nothing well, but because he fears disappointing my expectations. And with me? You ask softly. He can be honest in ways he cannot with me, she says. And that honesty can help me guide him. It lands then not a burden, but a role. She does not want you removed. She wants you positioned, close enough to sense his moods, quiet enough to avoid threatening her, wise enough to translate Nero's emotional chaos into usable truth. Historians still debate whether Poppaea manipulated Nero or managed him. Sitting here beneath the pergola, with sunlight warming your shoulders, you understand, she isn't manipulating. She's stabilizing a man whose power could tilt Rome off its axis, and she intends to use you as one of the stabilizing weights. Poppaea reaches for her cup again, takes a small sip, and then says, almost conversationally, tonight's performance will be important. You resist the urge to sigh. Important, my lady? Yes, she says. He is trying to impress me, which means he will be impulsive, and sensitive, and dramatic. You nod, as always. She smiles, an actual smile this time, soft and almost warm. Yes, but tonight I want him steady, and I want you near enough to soothe the rough edges. So you want me present, beside the musicians, she says, close enough for him to see, but not close enough for others to notice your importance. You bow your head, as you wish. Poppaea exhales contentedly and reclines on the cushions. A handmaid fans her with a palm frond. Another adjusts the drapery to shield her from direct sun. You sit quietly beside her, hands folded in your lap, posture calm, expression serene. One obscure cultural tidbit drifts through your thoughts. In elite Roman households, the empress's chosen attendants were often considered extensions of her will. When she selected someone, it was not for companionship, but for strategy. And now you sit here, officially chosen. The palace hums around you, soft, distant, restless. Tonight, Nero will perform again. Tonight, the palace will watch. Tonight, Poppaea will test how well you fit into the place she has carved for you. And you realize, your survival now depends not just on Nero's affection, but on Poppaea's belief that you can keep him from unraveling. You inhale slowly. The sun warms your face. A new role has begun. You remain with Poppaea in the shaded pergola for some time, watching sunbeams drift across the courtyard tiles in slow, dreamlike patterns. Eventually, handmaids arrive with fresh linen wraps and a small bowl of scented oil signals that Poppaea is ready to shift from quiet contemplation back into the rhythm of palace life. She stands, smooths the folds of her garment, and gives you a small nod. You've done enough for now. Rest. You will need clarity tonight. You bow your head. Yes, my lady. You watch as she walks away, surrounded by her attendants, moving like a quiet storm contained in elegance. The garden feels strangely larger without her, as though her presence bends space around her. You take a few breaths, letting your shoulders finally loosen. A moment later, one of Nero's pages appears from behind a column, breathless in that polite, palace-trained way. He bows quickly. My lady, he whispers. The emperor requests your presence in his rehearsal chamber. Of course he does. You rise at once and follow the boy through a series of inner corridors, twisting, echoing, lined with frescoes of gods, mid-debate. These hallways always feel a little too theatrical, like the painters were given too many creative liberties and not enough supervision. The closer you get to Nero's music rooms, the louder the palace hum becomes. Not frantic, just heightened. Like the air thickens in anticipation of the emperor's moods. The page stops before a carved door. He is inside, he murmurs, then retreats with the efficiency of someone hoping not to be noticed again for the rest of the day. You inhale, compose your features, and step into the chamber. The room is spacious, draped in purple cloth, and scattered with musical instruments, kitharas, flutes, drums, even a water organ that looks like it was created by someone who desperately wanted to impress Neptune. Nero is there pacing. Not angrily. Not impatiently. Just pacing in that way artists do when they've decided the muses should be here now, and they are late. He sees you and pauses mid-step. Ah, good. You've come. You bow your head. You requested me, Caesar. Yes, he says, waving his hand toward a stool. Sit. You do. He picks up his kithara, cradling it like a beloved pet that occasionally bites. His expression is intense, not fiery, but vulnerable. A side of Nero only a few people ever see, and even fewer understand. I'm reworking the melody from last night, he says. It must be grander, more divine. I want it to capture something real. He strums a few notes. They wobble like newborn animals, soft, uncertain, desperately trying to stand upright on trembling legs. You listen, nodding slowly. It's lovely, you say gently. Lovely is not enough. He snaps, then winces, immediately regretting the sharpness. I mean, it must be memorable. You soften your tone even further. It already is, but every melody grows with time. You're shaping it. He exhales a fragile breath disguised as a sigh. You think so? I do. Nero's shoulders lose a fraction of their tension. He begins plucking again, this time searching for a path through the notes rather than stumbling across them. He shifts, glances toward you. Poppaea will hear it tonight. I want her to feel pride. Ah, the root of it. Not applause, not praise. Pride. You choose your words like plucking ripe fruit. She always sees your talent, you say. She only wishes for you to be confident in it. Nero stares at you for a long, quiet moment. You see her clearly, he says at last. I try to see the palace clearly, you reply. It helps me serve. He nods, slow and thoughtful. You watch him return to his instrument. His fingers glide more fluidly now, guided by purpose rather than performance. He hums along soft, uncertain, and undeniably human, in a way history rarely paints him. A gentle, rhythmic tapping emerges behind you. A musician enters, an older man with deep-set eyes and a carefully blank expression. Caesar, shall we begin? He asks. Yes, Nero says, taking a position center room. Play the accompaniment. You shift to the bench against the wall, as instructed by Poppaea. From here, you are visible enough to steady Nero, but unobtrusive enough not to draw attention. The musician begins his part. Nero joins in, voice rising and falling like a tide, sometimes smooth, sometimes crashing against the rocks of ambition. The notes coil around the room, building, swelling, searching for perfection. You let the sound wash over you. Warm, imperfect. Full of longing, Nero never admits aloud. He stops mid-phrase. You're thinking something, he says, turning sharply toward you. You blink. I'm listening. No, he says, stepping closer. You're weighing the sound. I can see it. He's right. You were. You choose a gentle truth. It feels more open than last night, as though you're letting the melody breathe. Nero considers this. His eyes soften. Yes, that's what I want. Air, warmth, emotion, not stiffness. He returns to the kithara and begins again, this time with a noticeable ease. The musician follows his lead, shaping harmonies around Nero's voice. For several minutes, nothing exists except sound. You forget the palace. You forget politics. You forget that every word and breath matters. You simply listen. And then, at last, Nero lowers his kithara with a grateful exhale. That's enough for now, he says. You may go, but be close tonight. You stand, bowing. Yes, Caesar. As you leave the chamber, Nero's melody lingers behind you, threading through the hallway like a long, warm ribbon. And you think, historians still debate who Nero truly was. A tyrant, an artist, a child, a storm? But today, you saw someone else. A man desperate to be understood and terrified to be forgotten. And somehow, impossibly, you are now one of the few voices he trusts to steady the echo. The palace shifts as evening approaches. It feels like watching a giant creature stretch its limbs, lamps being lit one by one, servants rushing with scented oils, musicians gathering in tight clusters like nervous birds. The slow amber light of sunset stains the mosaics and casts long shadows across the marble floors. You walk through the corridor toward the performance chamber, dressed now in a fresh stola. Poppaea sent to your room a soft, pale garment that glows under lamplight. Not gaudy, not eye-catching, but undeniably elegant. Poppaea's message is clear. Blend in, but beautifully. When you arrive at the chamber, you see Nero is already inside. He stands in the center of the room, dressed in a flowing robe of deep purple trimmed with gold thread. His hair curls perfectly. His shoulders are set with theatrical importance. Tonight matters to him. The musicians gather behind him, tuning their instruments with trembling precision. A few officials linger near the walls, their expressions carefully controlled. They look like men preparing for a delicate storm, one that may bring rain or thunder. Poppaea enters shortly after, gliding in with a serenity that instantly reorders the room. She takes her place on an elevated couch, arranged with cushions in cream and gold. She doesn't look at Nero. She doesn't need to. Her presence is an anchor. A servant gestures discreetly, and you move to your assigned place to the right side of the chamber, beside the musicians. Exactly where Poppaea wants you, visible to Nero, indirect, quiet, steady. The room hushes. Nero steps forward. "My friends," he says, voice warm but trembling just slightly. "Tonight, I share a piece of my soul. You inhale through your nose. Here we go." He lifts his kithara. The musicians prepare. The first note echoes across the chamber like a thread of gold, thin, fragile, promising. Nero's voice joins a moment later, soft at first, then rising into something fuller, more confident. He closes his eyes, body swaying gently with the melody. He's performing not to impress Rome tonight, but to impress Poppaea, and maybe a little bit you. You sit completely still, hands folded in your lap, breathing calm. The music swells. One major historical fact. Nero performed with enormous emotion, believing himself a vessel of divine inspiration. Ancient writers describe how he sometimes wept mid-performance, not from sadness, but from overwhelming artistic passion. Tonight, you can almost see that fire glowing beneath his skin. But then, a string snaps. Sharp, loud, jarring. The note collapses. Musicians freeze. A few guests gasp. A nearby servant drops a tray. The tension spikes so hard the air feels brittle. Nero's eyes open wide, startled, instantly, wounded. His breath shakes. You know this moment is dangerous. Performance breaks often lead to emotional breaks. But before the room can choke on silence, you gently place your hand on your heart, a small gesture. Subtle, but intentional. A grounding gesture. Nero sees it. His jaw unclenches, his shoulders lower, his breath steadies. The musicians look at him anxiously, waiting for a thunderbolt. Nero smiles softly instead, small, embarrassed, human. "The gods," he says lightly, "wish for a pause." A ripple of laughter relieved, fragile passes through the room. Poppaea tilts her head, eyes narrowing just slightly. She saw what you did. She saw what Nero saw. And she saw how the moment transformed. Her gaze softens by half an inch. Approval, but also calculation. A new string is brought. A musician replaces it with trembling hands. Nero inhales, steadies himself, and begins again. This time, the music lands deeper, fuller, like something has cracked open inside him and made room for honesty. He sings with emotion that surprises even him. His voice trembles not with fear, but with rawness. You feel your own breath slow, matching the rhythm. Your presence becomes a quiet pillar, the steady shape in the corner he can look to. You realize now why Poppaea placed you here tonight. Not because Nero listens to you, but because Nero looks for you. Near the end of the performance, Nero lifts his eyes. He doesn't look at Poppaea first, he looks at you. Just for a heartbeat, just long enough to find stability. Then he looks at his wife, giving her the performance's final, vulnerable note. A gift. The chamber falls into perfect, trembling silence. Then applause rises soft at first, then swelling like the sea. Nero closes his eyes, drinking in the sound. Poppaea smiles, the small, quiet smile of a queen who has just regained control of her kingdom. The performance is over. But the night is not. Not yet. Because as you stand from your place, heart still, steady, Poppaea calls your name softly. "Walk with me." and Nero, still holding his kithera, watches you go. The palace has officially shifted again. The applause still echoes faintly in your mind as you follow Poppaea out of the performance chamber. The rest of the audience disperses slowly, buzzing with relief that everything ended without catastrophe. Musicians wipe sweat from their brows. Officials whisper about Nero's divine expression. Servants blink as if they've just survived a trial. But Poppaea? She glides. Her face remains unreadable, not cold, not pleased, but calculating in a way that suggests she is arranging the next several hours, days, perhaps weeks in her mind. You walk half a step behind her, your hands folded, your breathing even. Each step feels like a page turn. She leads you through a quiet corridor lit by soft lamps. The air smells faintly of fresh beeswax, and Laurel leaves someone polished the walls earlier. Her footsteps make no sound. At last, she stops in a small, secluded chamber, a sitting room draped in warm fabrics, lit by a single bronze lamp. The room feels insulated from the pot, palace private, intimate, safe. In that way, powerful spaces sometimes pretend to be. She gestures for you to sit. You obey. Poppaea stands for a moment longer, silently assessing you as though you are a text she is reading line by line. Then she settles into the cushioned seat across from you, hands folded in her lap, posture flawless. The silence stretches. Finally, she says, "You steadied him." You blink once, slowly. "I only listened, my lady." "No," she says, "you steadied him." Her tone leaves no room for deflection. She leans in slightly, her eyes bright with sharp intelligence. "When the string snapped, did you see how the entire room tightened? He nearly broke. But you kept him from falling into one of his moods." You hold her gaze. "I didn't intend to interfere. I simply—" "You breathed," she interrupts, "and he followed your breath." You exhale softly, unsure what to say. Poppaea leans back, studying the lines of your face. You may not realize it, but you have become a mirror he trusts. When he looks at you, he sees steadiness, calm, something he does not possess. You bow your head slightly, humbled but cautious. "If my presence helped maintain peace tonight, then I am grateful." Poppaea nods once. "Peace is a delicate thing in this household. Tonight, we kept it intact." A faint smile touches her lips. "With your help." The compliment is both gentle and heavy. A silk-wrapped knife, a flower with thorns. Poppaea's praise is a tool, not a gift. And she continues using it. "You should understand something," she says. "Nero's heart is disordered. He is not cruel by nature, but he is volatile. Easily wounded, easily exalted." She pauses. "You temper his storms, and that makes you valuable." You inhale slow, steady. "Valuable in a palace is a double-edged destiny," Poppaea continues. "This morning, he questioned his own perfection. Tonight, he sought to confirm it." Her eyes narrow slightly. "Your quiet presence made it possible." She shifts, adjusting her arm along the back of the couch. Historians will write about Nero's art, his performances, his voice. But behind them, there are always those unseen who keep him whole. You understand what she is telling you. This is no longer about survival. This is service, influence, a role. Poppaea stands again. You rise with her. She steps closer, not threateningly, but with the authority of someone who chooses her allies with surgical precision. "There are many kinds of power in Rome," she says quietly. "Yours is soft power, the rarest kind. The kind men underestimate because they do not feel it until it guides them." She breathes in slowly, deeply, then lets the air go. "Continue as you are. Do not seek more. Do not flaunt what he gives you. Be present. Be calm. Be wise." You nod. "Yes, my lady." "And," she adds, eyes narrowing just enough to signal the seriousness beneath her tone, "do not let others see how close he is to trusting you. Some will envy, others will fear. Play your role with subtlety." "I understand." She steps back, satisfied. A handmaid appears in the doorway, silent as a shadow. Poppaea takes this as her cue. "We will speak again in the morning," she says. "Get rest." You bow deeply. As you turn to go, You hear her voice one last time. The Emperor will look for you again. When he does, be steady. Then she leaves through another corridor, her silhouette disappearing like a drifting petal. You walk back toward your chambers, the palace quieter now, shadows gentler, lamps flickering with fatigue. Servants move more slowly, guards lean against walls, the night breathes. You touch the edge of a fresco as you pass a painted nymph looking over her shoulder, caught between movement and stillness. You know the feeling. Because tonight didn't just shift the palace's mood, it shifted your place in it. And as you reach your door and slip inside, you realize you are no longer just surviving Nero's Rome. You are shaping it softly, invisibly, breath by breath. And tomorrow, everything could change again. Your chamber feels different when you enter, as though the air has been rearranged while you were gone. The oil lamp burns low, its flame soft and tired, casting gentle circles of gold across the walls. Your linens are freshly smoothed. The faint scent of lavender lingers as if someone passed through moments before you arrived. You close the door behind you and lean against it briefly, letting your breath settle. The palace outside your walls still hums with the aftermath of Nero's performance footsteps, murmured conversations, the scrape of amphorae being moved for late-night refreshment. But inside your room, there is a warm hush. You cross the floor slowly, allowing your fingers to brush lightly against the plaster wall. The cool texture grounds you. Tonight was intense, not chaotic, not dangerous, but intimate in a way that leaves your nerves humming like plucked strings. You remove your hairpins one by one, placing them carefully onto the small bronze dish beside your bed. Each pin releases a tiny knot of tension from your scalp. When the last one slips free, your hair falls in a soft cascade around your shoulders. You feel oddly exposed, lighter, but uncertain. You sit on the edge of your bed and let out a slow exhale. Poppy's words echo in your mind. Be present, be calm, be wise. You know she meant it as both guidance and warning. The palace is full of ears, full of envy, full of eyes, trained to catch even the smallest shift in favor. Tonight, many saw something shift. You saw it too. Nero's glance brief but telling, his breath steadying because you breathe steadily, his smile softening when he saw you still, quiet, unafraid. You didn't seek influence, but influence has started seeking you. You lie back slowly, letting the mattress cradle the full weight of your body. The linens feel cool against your arms. The ceiling above you is faintly illuminated by the lamp's glow, the painted swirls of floral designs looking softer, gentler in the nighttime hush. Just when your eyes begin to grow heavy, a knock. You sit up instantly. Not urgent, not panicked, but deliberate. You rise, cross the room, and open the door a few inches. A familiar face peers in, the same young servant who brought you the Emperor's message last night. His expression is composed, but his hands tremble slightly. "My lady," he whispers. "Caesar requests your presence." Immediately, your stomach tightens, not with fear, but with bracing anticipation. You slip into your soft wrap, tie it at your waist, and step into the corridor. The servant leads you through winding hallways that glow dimly with bronze lamps. Each lamp throws long shadows across the floors and walls, stretching like silent arms reaching into your path. Did he say, "Why?" you ask. The servant shakes his head quickly. "Only that it concerns the performance." "Ah, of course." You walk faster. When you reach the Emperor's private chamber, 2 Praetorian guards step aside silently. You enter. The room is lit by only a few lamps. Nero sits on a low couch, his kithara resting beside him. His robe is slightly loosened, curls mussed from stress or thought. He looks undone. Not in a dangerous way, in a human way. When he sees you, something in his expression softens relief, embarrassment, need. "You came," he murmurs. "I was summoned." You answer gently. He chuckles a small, fragile sound. "Yes, summoned. I didn't mean to wake you." "It's all right." He looks down at his hands, turning his fingers over as if reading secrets in his palms. "I broke," he says quietly, when the string snapped. "For a moment, I thought everyone saw through me." Your heart softens, though you keep your expression serene. No one saw. That, you say. They saw an emperor who recovered. He lifts his head. Because of you. You inhale. He continues. When I looked at you, I felt steady. The room stopped swaying. There it is, spoken aloud now, a truth that Poppaea already knew. You keep your voice soft. Anyone would have steadied you. No, Nero says, not anyone. He rises and walks toward you slowly, not threatening, just vulnerable. He stops a few steps away. They applaud because they must, he says. They praise because they're afraid. But you, he swallows. You breathe. And I remember I am not alone. Your chest tightens not in fear but in the weight of what this could become. He takes a slow breath. Thank you. You bow your head slightly. I am glad to serve. But before you can step back, Nero speaks again softer than ever. Stay a moment. A request, not a command. You nod. He sits. You sit a short distance away. The room is quiet. So quiet, you can hear the faint crackle of a lamp wick. He doesn't speak at first. He simply sits with you, shoulders gradually relaxing, breath growing deeper, calmer. After several minutes, he finally whispers, "Go rest. Tomorrow will be complicated." "Yes, Caesar." You stand. He watches you go, not with hunger, not with command, but with trust. You return to your chamber, close your door gently, and sit on your bed in the dark. Historians still debate whether Nero ever found someone who could reach him with silence instead of flattery. Tonight, you suspect you already know the answer. But as sleep finally claims your mind, one thing is certain. When morning comes, the palace will expect you to choose a side, and Nero has already chosen you. Morning arrives slowly, as if even the sun hesitates before touching Nero's palace. You wake to soft golden light filtering through your linen curtains, warming your face. Your body feels heavier than usual, not from exhaustion, but from the strange weight of trust placed upon you last night. The Emperor's confession lingers in your mind like a whispered note. When I look at you, I feel steady. You rise, dress, and step into the corridor. Servants pass carrying trays of fruit and warm bread. A pair of Praetorian guards stands near the staircase, speaking in low tones. The palace looks the same as yesterday, but you sense the difference. Favor alters atmospheres. You're summoned almost immediately. The Emperor and Poppaea wait together in a small administrative chamber. A rare sight, both of them present without ceremony. Poppaea sits elegantly on a cushioned bench. Nero stands, holding a scroll, posture tense. When you enter, they both look at you. Poppaea speaks first. There has been discussion, she says, of last night's performance, of your steadiness. Nero nods, his face unreadable. The palace is full of opinions, he murmurs, whispers. Interpretations. You bow slightly, keeping your voice calm. I meant no disruption. Poppaea exchanges a glance with Nero, one of silent negotiation. Then she rises and steps toward you. You will remain close to the Emperor in the coming days, she says. Not as a threat to me, but as a stabilizing presence. You will observe, understand, and speak when he falters. You inhale. Yes, my lady. Nero steps closer. Too close for a moment, and then stops himself, remembering who is in the room. You help me think, he says quietly. When the court is chaotic, I lose myself. You keep me from unraveling. Poppaea's voice softens. Do not mistake this for elevation. It is responsibility. You nod. I understand. Good, she says. Then stay wise, stay small, stay steady. Their combined gaze feels like two forces shaping the direction of your life. One emotional, one strategic. You bow deeply. And just like that, the meeting ends. You walk out with quiet steps, your role now, cemented. Not a lover, not a rival. Something far more dangerous and delicate. A secret axis around which the Emperor's mood might turn. You return to your chambers as the palace awakens fully, lanterns dimming as daylight spreads across the walls. A handmaid greets you with warm water for your hands. unaware of the subtle shift in your place within this gilded world. You sit on your bed, letting the morning hush wrap around you. You are no longer merely surviving Nero's Rome. You are part of the machinery that keeps it from collapsing. For better or worse, your breath now steadies an emperor, and your silence now carries more weight than most people's shouts. As you lie back against your pillow, a gentle breeze moves through your window, carrying the soft scents of fig leaves and distant incense. You close your eyes, letting the palace drift to the edges of your awareness, and slowly, peacefully, you let your mind settle into the soft fade-out of the night. The palace so loud with music, whispers, shifting allegiances, and heavy footsteps grows quiet now, softening into a distant echo. Imagine its marble halls dimming into twilight, the torches flickering low, the mosaic floors cooling beneath the hush of night. You are no longer balancing the moods of emperors, no longer walking carefully between ambition and expectation. You are simply resting, in a room that feels far away from danger. Let your shoulders soften, let your breath become slow and heavy, drifting toward that comfortable rhythm that doesn't ask anything of you. Picture the soft linen beneath your palms, the faint scent of lavender rising from the folds of your bedding, the gentle breeze brushing past your curtains like a warm, reassuring hand. The weight of power, the tension of palace life, the edges of danger, all of it begins to dissolve, piece by piece, like sand slipping out of your fingers. Even the emperor's voice, so insistent and anxious, fades into a soft, harmless murmur. Poppeia's sharp eyes grow distant too, turning into nothing more than a memory of candlelight. You are no longer watched, no longer expected to calm storms, no longer required to steady anyone but yourself. Let the coolness of the room settle into your bones. Let the soft glow of your lamp dim in your imagination. Feel your body grow heavier against the mattress, sink a little deeper, and deeper still. The story is ending. The world grows quiet, and all that's left is the sound of your own slow breathing. Allow yourself to drift. Allow yourself to rest. Allow the night to take you gently by the hand and guide you into sleep.